Welcome into the Inside Scoop. Today is Monday, February 10th. We are live from Nashville, Tennessee, and I am your host, Josh Newberg. We are back after a busy National Signing Day, a busy Super Bowl weekend, but we're back at it. We are talking recruiting right here on the Inside Scoop, and today we have a loaded show. We're going to be talking Michigan's run at the number one overall class. We're going to be talking Auburn's run at the number one overall recruit, Zion Ely. And we're talking instant impact recruits at Texas. But first, let's talk about the biggest developments in the recruiting world, or at least things that I thought were interesting from the weekend. So before we get into it, make sure you guys are subscribed. All right, here we go. What recruits are asking for most? I thought this was really interesting. Article from Pete Nakos on the front page of On3, and here's a graphic with the 4 most asked amenities. You got cars, houses, chartered flights, and land. So here's what I think of each. I mean, if you're coming on campus, you need a car. I mean, that's probably, if you're a kid, that's probably one of the first things you're asking for. Makes a lot of sense here. And a lot of car dealerships are into advertising with some of these college athletes. Then you got houses. I mean, why not? Who wants to live in a dorm? This is a no-brainer. If you're giving me the option of sharing a bathroom with 4 other students, or I can ask for my own house, it's a no-brainer. Chartered flights. This is another one that makes a ton of sense, and I think it's something that they should be asking for. I mean, look, if you're a program like Oregon, and you're recruiting the state of Florida, and you want me to come play for you, hey, if you want me to do that, then make sure my parents can come watch me every weekend, because otherwise I don't need to leave the state, or I don't need to leave the Southeast. So I think chartered flights and ways to get parents to games are very important. And then you got land. Why not? I mean, hey, if you're going to take money, might as well invest it in something that's going to grow while you're not even watching. So I think they all make a lot of sense. I don't think any of these asks are out of bounds or over the line. And how does this really differ from what coaches are asking for? You ever seen a coach drive a crappy car? No, they're linked up with that Mercedes dealership in the college town as soon as they sign the contract. And most of them have a car stipend in the contract. So if it wasn't important to coaches, why would it be in the contract? Coaches ask for houses. I'm certain they ask for chartered flights. Now, I don't know about the land. That might be something I need to look into. I don't know exactly what coaches are asking for, but I think cars, houses, and chartered flights are probably something they're asking for. And on the grand scale of things, what does it really matter? A top quarterback right now is getting $1.5 to $2 million. I'm talking the top of the top. Meanwhile, Kirby Smart's making $13.2 million. Ryan Day's making $12.5 million. Dabo Sweeney's making $11.1 million. And they're still asking for cars in their contracts. So I just thought this was interesting. It's how the players are spending or what they're asking for. But really, how is it any different than what coaches are spending their money on? I don't know. All right. Up next, offensive tackle Emmanuel Ihenacho. He is locking in official visits. The number 2 offensive tackle in the country. He hasn't cut his list yet, like the number 1 offensive tackle, Jackson Cantwell, who cut his list down to a top 6. But let's do a little science here. Even though Emmanuel Ihenacho has not cut his list officially, he has said that he's going to take official visits to Georgia, Oregon, Penn State, Alabama, and Maryland. So if you read between the lines here, I think you can see his top 5. Then he said there's 3 teams fighting for his 6th official. That's LSU, Miami, and Texas A&M. So they're clearly on the outside looking in of the prior group, but they are still in the mix for him. So we can see kind of who these top teams are even before Ihenacho makes that big cut. The team that sticks out here to me is Maryland. And the reason why is they already have On3's number 1 overall Zion Ely committed to him. I mean, and here they are making a serious run, not just making a serious run. They're already in the mix. They already have an official visit scheduled with Ihenacho. So Maryland is a team. Now we'll see if they have the staying power. And I'm not doubting Mike Locksley here at all. I'm just saying Maryland hasn't been involved for the number 1 player, let alone the number 1 and number 2 player in as long as I can remember. And I've been covering recruiting for 20 years. So we'll see what happens with Ihenacho, but it looks like if you read between the lines, we can start to see some top teams emerging. All right, 5-star quarterback doubles down on Houston. 5-star quarterback Keyshawn Henderson, the 6'3" gunslinger from the city of Houston, is committed to Willie Fritz and the Cougars. And he made that commitment back in May. And despite that, his ranking has only been on the rise, and so have the teams that are involved with him. Florida State's now offered, Auburn, Georgia has offered, SMU is in the mix as well. But, he said, quote, "I'm not taking the visits to flip or anything like that because I love Houston with all my heart." I mean, you can't argue with it. He's from Houston. I'm sure he does love Houston. The question is, like you said, I've heard this one used in recruiting before. If you walk into a barbershop enough, at some point you're going to get a haircut. And if Henderson keeps taking these visits or schedules these visits and he's going to be out on the road, we'll see what happens. But right now, the Lone Star's top talent is a priority for Houston, and he is committed. So we'll keep an eye on that one. LSU jumps into the mix for Jonah Williams. Oregon 4-star quarterback commit was at USC 2 weekends ago. There was a lot of buzz around that. Would Lincoln Riley be able to flip him? But now LSU is a major player as well. LSU OC Joe Sloan has been in contact and is making Williams a priority. Meanwhile, Oregon might not be all that focused because they are pursuing number 1 quarterback Jared Curtis. And Williams is continuing to move forward with his recruitment. He's, quote, weighing out all his options, end quote. Sounds telling there, but the On3 industry tabs Williams as the number 1 prospect in Illinois, the number 63 recruit overall. We'll see where his ranking ends up. But right now, he's one of the highest touted quarterbacks in the country, and he might be looking around. So there are the major developments from the weekend. You guys let me know, what do you think is most important? Also, are the recruits asking for the right things? Let me know. Comment section below. Let's talk some Michigan recruiting. The Wolverines finished 6th in the 2025 cycle, but after the way it finished, you know what I'm talking about, with the acquisition of Bryce Underwood, Ty Haywood, a couple others, you've got to wonder, is this cycle in 2026 a top 5 finish, maybe even top 3 for Michigan? Well, I got EJ Holland from the Wolverine on this video, and we're going to hit on some of Michigan's most important targets in 2026. But before we get started, Michigan fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. This is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. All right, let's bring on EJ Holland from the Wolverine. EJ, we got to hit on some of these big names, starting with offensive tackle, the industry's number 1 overall, Jackson Cantwell. Here's what I want to say about Jackson Cantwell. We had Steve Wiltfong, Chad Simmons on. They didn't think that Michigan was in the top tier right now, but they both agreed. When it's all said and done, they think Michigan's going to be a major factor in this recruitment. I want to ask you why. What do you think Michigan has going for them with Jackson Cantwell?
NIL. Next question. No, I'm just kidding. NIL, obviously. I think with Jackson Cantwell, he already has an agent, Drew Rosenhaus, who obviously is one of the power agents, not just with NIL, but in all of professional sports, college sports. I mean, if you think of an agent, Drew Rosenhaus is top of mind. And so for Jackson Cantwell to already be signed with his agency, I think speaks volumes about how serious NIL is in this recruitment. And when you look at a school like Michigan, they are putting a premium on offensive linemen. They were willing to put together a very strong package for Andrew Babalola. They obviously put one together for Ty Haywood. Without making offensive line a premium position and without the NIL backing, Michigan wouldn't have landed Ty Haywood. Mm-hmm. So I think that with Jackson Cantwell, they're willing to maybe do something similar. I'm not sure it's a necessity to do that after landing Andrew Babalola and Ty Haywood. But again, Michigan really values the offensive line. It wasn't up to par this past season. Sharon Moore is an offensive line guy, and he knows winning starts up front. And so he wants to put together the best offensive line possible. They're already, having discussions with Jackson Cantwell. He's already spoken to some people around Barstool Sports, which I thought was interesting. Obviously, you have Dave Portnoy, who runs that. So I think that's a little interesting tidbit there. Also, Sean McGee, Michigan's general manager, has been a critical piece in revamping Michigan's NIL. Sean McGee went out there with Sharon Moore to see Jackson Cantwell during the contact period last month. So I think Michigan is probably, in the middle somewhere of that top group that he released. He's been to campus once, which took place in December. He's set to come back to campus, whether it's for a spring visit or for an OV, maybe both. So, yeah, I mean, I think what Michigan has to offer is obviously NIL, but also but also offensive line production. Sharon Moore's background as an offensive lineman, an offensive line coach, a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line coach, and then Grant Newsome, Michigan's actual offensive line coach right now, played along the offensive line at Michigan too. So I think that Michigan has a lot going for it when it comes to landing elite offensive linemen. They landed 2 this cycle. They can do the same next cycle.
All right. Now, Michigan also has a rich tradition of landing elite running backs in this cycle. They are in it for the number 1 running back, Savion Hyder. He's out of Virginia. Who do you view as Michigan's best or top competition right now? I know it's really early, but who are the Wolverines battling?
Yeah, when it comes to Savion Hyder, I would say Michigan still has the momentum in that recruitment, but Georgia has really made a strong impression. They were the only school that hosted him for a visit in January. Georgia has a new running backs coach, so I think Michigan has a little bit of a built-in advantage in the sense that Tony Alford, Michigan's running backs coach, has known Savion for years, has recruited him dating back to his time at Ohio State. But Kirby Smart has done a fantastic job of personally recruiting Hyder. Georgia will get him back on campus for an official visit and maybe a spring visit. So I would say right now, Michigan, Georgia are the schools that are maybe at the top. Ohio State has definitely made a strong push as well. So yeah, I think Michigan needs to keep doing what it's doing, though. This is another one where Michigan has the NIL backing. They've shown a willingness to invest in the running back position. They did it with Justice Haynes out of the transfer portal. And, from what I've heard early on, they're going to be willing to put together a really strong package for Hyder as well. He's at the very top of the board along with Javian Osborne. So, right now, Michigan still trending in the right direction, but Georgia's going to turn up the heat. Ohio State is going to turn up the heat. We'll see if anybody else really jumps in the mix there. Tennessee is a little bit of a dark horse. Penn State's still involved, but right now I think Michigan needs to just keep doing what it's doing. It has the relationships. It's gotten Hyder on campus many times. So I think their visit in January made a strong impression, but we'll see. Hyder doesn't want to make a decision until the summer, so still a long time to go.
Yeah. Another position that we know is paid a premium by Michigan is tight end, and there's a good one on the board. Brock Harris. He goes 6'6", 240 pounds. He's out of Utah. What do you think right now of where the Wolverines stand with this prospect?
Yeah, Brock recently released his top 6. I think Michigan is definitely towards the top in that recruitment. Another one where, you could see Michigan and Georgia battling it out. I think the schools close to home, anytime you recruit a Utah kid, you're going to have to recruit against Utah, BYU, the schools closer to home. But I think Michigan's done a great job in this recruitment. Michigan tight ends coach Steve Casula arrived as part of the program last year and immediately made Brock a top priority. He's been to campus twice already. He's looking at making his 3rd visit in the spring and then coming back for an official visit. So even though he's way out west, he's already been to campus multiple times. He feels like a top priority. Michigan can obviously sell not only tight end production, but a need for a tight end. If you remember, Michigan lost Andrew Olesh, a 5-star tight end, to Penn State in the 11th hour on National Signing Day in December. So they only ended up with 1 tight end commit in 2025. That's Eli Owens, who's more of an H-back, fullback type of prospect. So Michigan really has a need for a big, tall, true receiving threat at the tight end position, kind of your next Colston Loveland. That's really what they've been pitching to both Brock Harris and Matt Ludwig, who's an on-300 tight end out of Montana. They are at the top of the tight end board early on. Again, I think if I were to, say where Michigan stands with both Brock Harris and Matt Ludwig, I would definitely say top 3 for both.
Wow. All right. Let's talk about the number 1 player in the state of Michigan. Last year at this time, the number 1 player in the state of Michigan was headed to the SEC. In the end, Bryce Underwood was a Wolverine, but this year it's wide receiver CJ Sadler. He's from Cass Tech, top 100 prospect overall. Is Michigan making him a priority early on?
Oh, most definitely. Michigan has had plenty of success recruiting at Cass Tech over the years. And I think something that Sharon Moore wants to do as head coach is seal the borders. I mean, they want to keep their top talent at home. I think the state of Michigan has a couple of big time priorities in 26 in Gregory Patrick and CJ Sadler. And then 2027 is absolutely loaded in the state. So Moore's kind of, forward thinking in keeping that elite talent that's to come. But CJ is terrific. He's been on the radar for a long time. He's had a Michigan offer for several years. I remember covering CJ as a seventh grader, eighth grader. So it's crazy to see that he's about to enter his senior year. Yeah. So he's been to Michigan double digit times. He has a terrific relationship with Sherrod Moore, with Michigan wide receivers coach Ron Bellamy. I think CJ wants to continue to take some visits, but he is close to Bryce Underwood as well. That's a big selling point for wide receivers. Obviously, they came up together through Detroit's Sound Mind, Sound Body 7-on-7 program. So I think with Bryce on board, with Sherrod Moore making a push locally with his relationships with some of the other players on the team, the staff, I think Michigan is the team to beat for CJ Sadler early on. And, Michigan needs top end wide receivers. CJ's as electrifying as you can get in the slot. I think they're going to have some NIL discussions with Ohio State wide receiver commit Chris Henry Jr. They're making a hard push for on 300 wide receivers Travis Johnson and Nolan Scott. But I think CJ's kind of a little bit of a different type of receiver, just a dynamic guy that you can put in the slot, can return kicks and punts, kind of Tavon Austin-esque.
All right. Now, Michigan brought in a really solid DB class last cycle, and they're back at it. We're talking Jet Washington, the number 3 safety in the land, number 35 overall, so borderline 5-star here. He's 6'4", 185 at the safety position. Does Michigan have a shot here with Washington? On3 is honored to announce the next stop of the Next Greatest Generation Tour at Cherokee High School in Rogersville, Tennessee. In partnership with the Army National Guard, we are proud to recognize Cherokee High School as a Team of the Year. This season, the Cherokee Chiefs demonstrated remarkable selflessness, resiliency, and determination in the face of adversity. While their community narrowly avoided the worst of Hurricane Helene's destruction, their neighbors in Greene County were not as fortunate. When West Greene Middle School was left without access to water or a place to practice due to severe flooding, Cherokee High School stepped up, offering their facilities and even providing lunch for the displaced team. Their season was further marked by emotional challenges. On September 13th, during a pivotal conference game against Elizabethton, Cherokee head coach received the devastating news that his father had passed away, forcing him to leave the game in the second half. Despite the loss that night, the Chiefs responded with incredible resilience, winning 4 straight conference games and securing their first playoff berth since 2019. Please join us in congratulating Cherokee High School on this well-deserved honor. We look forward to celebrating the Chiefs tomorrow night as part of the Next Greatest Generation Tour.
Yeah, I think Jet is willing to leave, the Western U.S. He has been to Alabama. He's been to Ohio State. He's been to Michigan. I think all those schools have legitimate shots in his recruitment. Sherrod Moore went out and personally visited him a few weeks ago. Jet was on campus in the fall. He told me he's looking to get back to campus at some point this spring. He's a high academic kid, high character kid, kind of fits the Michigan mold. And Michigan's invested a lot of resources in Bishop Gorman. They've been to the school many times over the last couple of years. They recently landed running back Micah Kaapana out of Bishop Gorman. So I think they are starting to, kind of build their brand or their name at Bishop Gorman, which is obviously one of the premier high schools, not just in the Western U.S., but the entire country. So, yeah, I think Jet Washington also kind of fills a void that Michigan didn't this cycle. As great as the secondary haul was, with 5 on 300 prospects, including 3 top 100 prospects, they wanted a bigger, longer box safety type of guy, and they didn't really get that. I think Jet Washington is a phenomenal athlete. He's 6'3.5", 6'4", terrific basketball player, really lengthy. They wanted that type of safety this cycle, didn't get him. So I think 2026 Jet Washington is the prototypical guy they want to fill that void.
All right. Last thing I want to talk to you about is the quarterback position. We had Brady Smeagol on the show last week. He gave a great interview. He told us, fresh off this decommitment from Florida State, that he has some renewed interest in Michigan. Coach Sharon Moore was out to see him. He's in no rush to make a decision, probably later on this summer. Brady Smeagol, top 10 quarterback at the position. Who else is a top target for Michigan at the quarterback position this cycle?
Yeah, quarterback's kind of interesting, right? Because you landed Bryce Underwood in
Right.
2025, so it's kind of a tough selling point, especially when his NIL was very public and all over social media. Michigan invested a lot in Bryce Underwood. He's the future of the program. He's probably going to start, for 3 years and be out of there. Probably get significant playing time, if not start this year. So you kind of are coming in knowing that. And I think it's going to be tough for Michigan to land that elite level quarterback in 26, but a guy that makes perfect sense and I think has an argument as the top quarterback in the country is Ryder Lyons. And the reason
Mm-hmm.
Ryder Lyons makes so much sense is,
It does.
yes, he's a 5-star, but he's taking a mission. So he technically wouldn't enroll at the school of his choice until 2027. That gives enough separation between Bryce Underwood. By the time Lyons arrives on campus, Underwood would already be junior or going into his junior year. And on top of that, Lions will probably need a little bit of time to get back in the groove of things coming back from a mission. Whenever these kids go on missions, it's a very rigorous commitment and you're away from football. You only get a day to work out every week. So I think a lot of times when kids come back, they need maybe a year to really get back into the swing of things, to get acclimated. So I think that would be, the dream scenario would be to move from Bryce Underwood to Ryder Lyons. But I still think that's a little bit of a tough hill to climb. I think USC, where his brother plays, is probably the favorite right now. There are several other major programs involved. So that one's going to be a tough win. So you look at some other options. You mentioned Brady Smeagol. He's a really interesting prospect. Michigan, you could make the argument that Michigan should go after a high ceiling quarterback after Bryce Underwood, someone you want to develop. But you can also make the argument that Michigan didn't have any real high floor prospects, so its quarterback room suffered this year. I think Brady Smeagol is a little bit of a, sure bet. He's kind of on the older side for his grade. He's actually older than Bryce Underwood. He's very productive at the high school level. He's a top 100 prospect. I think that Smeagol would be a guy that you can bring in. He can be a reliable option. And, like I said, he's very productive, very smart, a coach's kid. So he
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. But you could also go the, alternate route and bring in a really high upside kid, a guy you develop and could turn into something special. I think Oscar Rios fits that mold, also out of California. He's a little bit on the thinner side, but taller pocket passer at 6'3", 175. Also a big threat with his legs. I mean, his running ability is very, very impressive. Something that, a guy like Smeagol doesn't necessarily have. So, I think those guys are, some options to watch early on. And then Michigan just entered the mix for a really interesting prospect, Matt Ponatoski, out of Ohio. He's from the same school as Jordan Marshall at Cincinnati Moeller.
Mm-hmm.
He was the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Ohio. He's definitely one that Michigan likes early on, and I could see him being a take, even though he's across enemy lines. Michigan already landed Jordan Marshall from that same school, so Ponatoski could be one to watch as well.
All right, EJ, ton of intel. We will just have to see. Does Michigan finish top 5 or higher in 2026? Let's talk some Auburn recruiting. The Tigers are off to a hot start, sitting at number 4, and they have a total of 6 current commitments, half of which are in the top 100. But today, we are here to talk about Auburn's shot at On3's number 1 player in the country, edge Zion Ely. And he's committed to Maryland, yes, but on National Signing Day, we had on expert Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons, and I asked them, do you think he's going to end up signing with Maryland 1 year from now? They had their doubts, so I said, what team is the biggest threat? Both of them agreed that Auburn was the team to watch right now. So on this video, we're going to head out to the Plains. We're going to talk with Jeffrey Lee of Auburn Live and find out if Auburn's going to land the number one player in America this year. But before we get going, Auburn fans, these are exciting times. Make sure you hit subscribe to the On3 Recruit channel. This is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, and we want you to be subscribed, so jump on board. All right, let's bring on Jeffrey Lee of Auburn Live. There he is, Jeff. Let's talk a little bit about Zion Ely, because the boys, Chad Simmons and Steve Wiltfong, they got my attention by saying that Auburn is a potential threat. So we know he was there for Junior Day. Haven't really talked too much about it since, but what have your sources been saying coming out of that Junior Day visit?
Feeling great about the visit, feeling great about the relationships that they have, not only with St. Francis Academy, but with Zion Ely. It goes back, Josh, not only with DJ Durkin, who is very well known up in that area and has done very well. Auburn is 4 for 4 right now with St. Francis kids since DJ Durkin has come over. That includes Bryce Diss, Blake Woodby, Darrell Robinson, Darion Smith, they closed with on signing day. So 4 for 4 so far. You're looking at Wayne Henry, who they have committed. So 4.5 out of 4.5. And then Zion Ely and Jair Edwards, the other two that they're really trying to get in the boat. But Zion, I tell you, Josh, something that's going to get talked about more and more here is not just DJ Durkin, Hugh Freeze, Rock Bellantoni, but Wayne Henry. Wayne Henry is now an assistant edge coach for Auburn. He is Rock Bellantoni's assistant. He coached at St. Francis 2 years ago before going on to Coastal Carolina and now at Auburn. But there's several relationships there with Zion Ely that I think are very beneficial for Auburn, very advantageous for Auburn, which makes them a huge threat to the in-state Maryland.
All right. So he had a really interesting quote. He came out and said, it's not all about NIL. He said, I know wherever I go, I'm going to make my money. So if it's not just an NIL battle here, what does Auburn really have going for
them? These St. Francis kids, believe it or not, man, and these for the past 2 years, I've been covering these kids since DJ Durkin has really started recruiting there. But they're very tight. They're a very tight-knit group of kids, a very tight-knit group of teammates. And it was a big deal that Blake Woodby committed to Auburn back in the summer. His commitment got things rolling with Bryce Diaz. Wayne Henry committed early. Darrell Robinson came in, and they're very close. So when Zion Ely comes down for his Junior Day visit and when he's leaving, he's talking about those relationships, Josh, and I think it's big. I think that's what Auburn and Hugh Freeze, they're going to those high school ranks. They've got the NIL to compete with anybody. Yeah. Their offer might not be the highest. It might not be the best, but it's going to be comparable. And if you can get in that comparable, if you can get in the same ballpark as those other schools, and then you can offer relationships not only with the coaches, not only with other recruits, but with other players, I think that's a big deal for those St. Francis kids, and Zion Ely being one of them.
Now, when we talk about Zion Ely and Auburn, I mean, this isn't something that's just going to come together in the next couple weeks, is it? I feel like we're looking at a long play here where Auburn's probably going to get them on campus a couple more times, and then it's kind of like in football. Hey, we're just going to try to hang around till the end of the fourth quarter and make a run at the end. Is that the vibe you get when it comes to this recruitment?
Absolutely. He's only been there once now, and it was a big hit. But I think you're going to try to get him back in the spring for a practice. I think you're going to get him back in the summer for an official visit. I think you want to try to get him back in the fall for a game day to let him experience that. So I'm looking at 3 more visits from Zion Ely. I think Auburn needs at least 2 more visits to get him real comfortable, real familiar, and feeling good about Auburn before December.
All right, let's move from one number one to another. Let's talk number 1 quarterback Jared Curtis, because he recently locked in an official visit to Auburn. That's going to come at the end of May. Former UGA commit, named Oregon as leader, but Auburn is buzzing here. Jeff, what's the latest between the Tigers and Curtis?
Really think he is that tier 1 quarterback that Auburn's going to go all in on before they take anyone else. Jared Curtis has they identified him early. Of course, a lot of schools did. He's a 5-star guy for a reason. Yeah. But they got him on campus last fall for the Vanderbilt game, I believe. It didn't go – not many home games went in Auburn's favor last year. So but he enjoyed the environment. He enjoys the coaches. Ken Austin, Jesse Stone, Hugh Freeze is very involved in this recruitment. So getting him on campus again, the Junior Day visit, and then getting him back. No, I'm sorry, he didn't come to junior day. He was there in the fall. He's coming for an official visit, and I expect him to be there in the spring as well for a spring practice visit to get him on campus. But I don't think Auburn is. I don't think they think they're the team to beat. I don't think that they're not having false impressions from him. But you got to get him back on campus. Got to keep recruiting him. Got to keep building those relationships, and getting him back on that official visit will be big for that.
Yeah, they are solidly in the mix there, but I agree with you. Probably not considered the front runner just yet, but hey, might not be a bad place for Auburn to be right now in that race. Let's talk about a couple more 5-stars before we get out of here. 2 more. Tristan Keys is the first. Is he going to be the next 5-star wide receiver to sign with the Tigers?
The most likely, absolutely. Auburn has been in on him for a long time. They've developed relationships not only with Marcus Davis, not only with Hugh Freeze, not only with Derek Nix. All of these guys are recruiting him extremely heavy. But you've got to remember, he's got personal relationships with Deuce Knight, the quarterback Auburn just signed out of Mississippi. So I think there's a lot going on with Auburn right now. You've got him on campus already for the big junior day. You're going to get him back for an official visit. You're probably going to get him back during the spring. So Deuce Knight, believe it or not, who signed with Auburn in December, he's going through spring with Auburn. He's going to be a big deal here. He and they're very close. And I think that's going to be a big deal. It's going to keep Auburn in it. And they've had really good luck with signing top wide receivers since Hugh Freeze on campus. So I think Auburn's a legit contender here.
Yeah, they seem like it. Now I want to wrap it up with one prospect that I think Auburn still has some work to do, but they are in the mix for, and that's number 1 linebacker in the country, Tyler Atkinson. Can anybody pull him out of the state of Georgia, and will it be Auburn?
I don't think so. I don't think so. It's going to be very difficult for anybody to get him out of the Peach State. I think Auburn, if anything, has as good a shot as anyone else. I do think they'll get him back on campus for an official visit. I do think there are relationships having already been made. So Auburn will be in it. That's one of those things. I think Auburn will be in it with him until the end. I just don't think they're going to be able to pull him out of the Peach State.
Well, Auburn fans, it's an exciting cycle already with the top 5 class, but if they're going to maintain that, they got to land more. And this right here, this is a nice group of guys that they are after. Auburn fans, talk to Jeff Lee and I. Do you think the Tigers will land on 3's number 1 overall player, Zion Ely? Let me know. Comment section below. Let's talk some Texas recruiting. The Longhorns finished with the number 1 class in the country. It wasn't Georgia. All the experts thought it was going to be Georgia, but in the end, it was Texas. And in this video, I got On3 national analyst Cody Blair. We're gonna find out who the instant impact signees are for the Longhorns. I mean, we've seen it from guys like Colin Simmons, Ryan Wingo. Who is next? That's what we want to know. So before we get going, Texas fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. All right, let's bring in Cody Blair. And Cody, we will start on the offensive side of the ball. This 2025 class is absolutely loaded. Who do you think is going to make a instant impact in Austin?
Josh, I tell you what, it's tough picking for Texas. After making a deep run in the college football playoff, it's tough to find areas where young guys can walk in and truly make an impact with such a talented roster in front of them. But the wide receiver position at Texas is taking a hit next year. They lose Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, and Silas Bolden, who are all declaring for the draft. So I think a guy like On3 Industry 5-star Khalil Lockett out of Saxe, Texas, truly is one of the few offensive signees that has a real shot at getting some early playing time. And I think that has to do with his style of play combined with the amount of targets that will need to be replaced. Because, Josh, this is a guy that wants to head tap defensive backs. You know, this is a receiver that likes to play above the rim and go up and high point the football. And for him, it's easier than most, because he has nearly 34-inch arms and a 6'8" wingspan at almost 6'2", which is completely insane for someone his size, but it allows him to win at the catch point consistently, and I think it can bring a chess piece to this wide receiver room at Texas that they don't necessarily have elsewhere going into next season.
So when I look on the defensive side of the ball, I think Colin Simmons last year, he's an instant impact, all-American type player. There's no way, right? There's just no way that Texas could go out and find another Colin Simmons, right?
Yeah, Josh, the defensive front takes a massive hit going into next season. They have at least 4 key contributors along the defensive line going to the next level. And yes, they attacked the portal well, bringing in like Hero Canoe, Cole Brevard, and Travis Shaw into the fold. But to your point, Josh, I still think there's room for an on-3 5-star, and that's Lance Jackson coming in and making an impact. He has the size, the bend, the burst. I mean, Josh, he's 6'5", 275 pounds right now. And he has the athleticism to stand up and rush off the edge, but he also has the power and the hand strength to kick inside as an interior defender with his hand in the dirt. His versatility and physical traits are truly rare. And to be honest with you, this is my favorite prospect in the entire 2025 recruiting cycle. He simply checks every single box. I mean, this kid's an absolute monster, and I can't imagine him not seeing the field as a true freshman in Austin.
All right. So when we look at Texas, like you said, they hit the portal. They do a lot of great high school recruiting. Not everybody is going to have an opportunity to come in and play right away. So looking long-term at this signing day class, who do you think is going to be one that's going to have a great career when it's all said and done at Texas?
Yeah, I think this one may be a bit unexpected because the talent in this 2025 Texas class is just so damn good. I could have landed on a few names here, really. But the guy I kept coming back to over and over again as I looked at this group was James Simon, the 4-star running back out of Shreveport in Louisiana. His senior tape was sneakily one of the better senior tapes at the position this cycle. And I think it showed arguably the most improvement from junior to senior year of any back in the country. He's got so much wiggle and burst at 200 pounds that I think the biggest area, though, of his growth from last year to this year was his decisiveness and his vision. He isn't pitter-pattering at the hole. He's running with violence, with excellent pad level. And not only can he run through defenders, he can make them miss in a phone booth as well. I just think his arrow's only pointing up, and I would not be shocked at all to see him become the bell cow back for the Longhorns down the road.
We're big fans of James Simon here. He committed with me right here on the On3 Recruits channel. So, yeah, hoping he has a big career out in Texas. But Longhorn fans, talk to us. Who do you guys think are going to be the instant impact recruits from this class? Let us know.